Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. What a beautiful garland. I can't stop laughing ever since Leelanath Prabhu gave that class. And he was talking about how he went back to the devotees and they said, get a box and go get all your paraphernalia. And he goes, I did not know what is paraphernalia. Devotees have such uncommon language. We're going to go pick up your paraphernalia. Paraphernalia. Yeah, all your stuff. Let's put it in a box and bring it. Bring all your paraphernalia. Okay, we're continuing with our reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We're at Canto 3, Chapter 21. And Karuna Sagar, where are you? Where are we? Where are we taking up at? What did he say? 13. He's like the atomic clock that everyone bases they set their watches by. Okay. The great sage Kardama Muni said, O supreme worshipful Lord, my power of sight is now fulfilled, having attained the greatest perfection of the sight of you, who are the reservoir of all existences. Through many successive births of deep meditation, advanced yogis aspire to see your transcendental form. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described here as the reservoir of all goodness and all pleasure. Unless one is situated in the mode of goodness, there is no real pleasure. When, therefore, one's body, mind, and activities are situated in the service of the Lord, one is on the highest perfectional stage of goodness. Kardama Muni says, your Lordship is the reservoir of all that can be understood by the nomenclature of goodness, and by experiencing you face to face, eye to eye, the perfection of sight has now been attained. These statements are the pure devotional situation. For a devotee, the perfection of the senses is to engage in the service of the Lord. The sense of sight, when engaged in seeing the beauty of the Lord, is perfected. The power to hear, when engaged in hearing the glories of the Lord, is perfected. The power to taste, when one enjoys by eating prasad, is perfection. When one enjoys by eating prasad, is perfected. When all the senses engage in relationship with the personality of Godhead, one's perfection is technically called bhakti yoga, which entails detaching the senses from material indulgence and attaching them to the service of the Lord. When one is freed from all designated conditional life and fully engages in the service of the Lord, one's service is called bhakti yoga. Kardama Muni admits that seeing the Lord personally is bhakti yoga. Kardama Muni admits that seeing the Lord personally in bhakti yoga is the perfection of sight. The exalted perfection of seeing the Lord is not exaggerated by Kardama Muni. He gives evidence that those who are actually elevated in yoga aspire in life after life to see this form of the personality of Godhead. He was not a fictitious yogi. Those who are actually on the advanced path aspire only to see the eternal form of the Lord. Your lotus feet are the true vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane nations. Only persons deprived of their intelligence by the spell of the deluding energy will worship those feet with a view to attain the trivial and momentary pleasures of the senses, which even persons rotting in hell can attain. However, O my Lord, you are so kind that you bestow mercy even upon them. As stated in Bhagavad Gita's 7th chapter, there are two kinds of devotees: those who desire material pleasures and those who desire nothing but service to the Lord. Material pleasures can be attained even by hogs and dogs, whose condition of life is hellish. The hog also eats, sleeps, and enjoys sex life to the full extent, And it is also very satisfied with such hellish enjoyment of material existence. Modern yogis advise that because one has senses, one must enjoy to the fullest extent like cats and dogs. Yet one can go on and practice yoga. This is condemned here by Kardama Muni. He says that such material pleasures are available for cats and dogs in a hellish condition. The Lord is so kind that if so-called yogis are satisfied by hellish pleasures, He can give them facilities to attain all the material pleasures they desire, but they cannot attain the perfectional stage attained by Kardama Muni. Hellish and demoniac persons do not actually know what is the ultimate attainment in perfection, and therefore they think that sense gratification is the highest goal of life. They advise that one can satisfy the senses and at the same time, by reciting some mantra and by some practice, can cheaply aspire for perfection. Such persons are described here as hata-medasa, which means those whose brains are spoiled. They aspire for material enjoyment by perfection of yoga or meditation. In Bhagavad Gita it is stated by the Lord that the intelligence of those who worship the demigods has been spoiled. Similarly, here too, it is stated by Kardama Muni that one who aspires after material enjoyment by practice of yoga has spoiled his brain substance and is fool number one. Actually, the intelligent practitioner of yoga should aspire for nothing else but to cross over the ocean of nescience by worshipping the personality of Godhead and to see the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord is so kind, however, that even today persons whose brain substance is spoiled are given the benediction to become cats, dogs, or hogs and enjoy material happiness from sex life and sense gratification. The Lord confirms this benediction in Bhagavad Gita, quote, "Whatever a person aspires to receive from me, I offer him as he desires," unquote. 15. Therefore, desiring to marry a girl of like disposition who may prove to be a veritable cow of plenty in my married life, to satisfy my lustful desire, I too have sought the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the source of everything, for you are like a desire tree. Purport. In spite of his condemning persons who approach the Lord for material advantages, Kardama Muni expresses his material inability and desire before the Lord, saying, "Although I know that nothing material should be asked from you, I nevertheless desire to marry a girl of like disposition." The phrase like disposition is very significant. Formerly, boys and girls of similar dispositions were married. The similar natures of the boy and girl were united in order to make them happy. Not more than 25 years ago, and perhaps it is still current, parents in India used to consult the horoscope of the boy and girl to see whether there would be factual union in their psychological conditions. These considerations are very important. Nowadays, marriage takes place without such consultation, and therefore soon after the marriage there is divorce and separation. Formerly, husband and wife used to live together peacefully throughout their whole lives, but nowadays it is a very difficult task. Kardama Muni wanted to have a wife of like disposition because a wife is necessary to assist in spiritual and material advancement. It is said that a wife yields the fulfillment of all desires in religion, economic development, and sense gratification. If one has a nice wife, he is to be considered a most fortunate man. In astrology, a man is considered fortunate who has great wealth, very good sons, or a very good wife. Of these three, one who has a very good wife is considered the most fortunate. Before marrying, one should select a wife of like disposition and not be enamored by so-called beauty or other attractive features for sense gratification. In the Bhagavatam 12th canto, it is said that in the Kali Yuga, marriage will be based on the consideration of sex life. As soon as there is deficiency in sex life, the question of divorce will arise. Kardama Muni could have asked his benediction from Uma, for it is recommended in the scriptures that if anyone wants a good wife, he should worship Uma. But he preferred to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead because it is recommended in the Bhagavatam that everyone, whether he is full of desires, has no desire, or desires liberation, should worship the Supreme Lord. Of these three classes of men, one tries to be happy by fulfillment of material desires, another wants to be happy by becoming one with the Supreme, and another, the perfect man, is a devotee. He does not want anything in return from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He only wants to render transcendental loving service. In any case, everyone should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he will fulfill everyone's desire. The advantage of worshiping the Supreme Person is that if one has desires for material enjoyment, if he worships Krishna, he will gradually become a pure devotee and have no more material hankerings. 16. O my Lord, you are the master and leader of all living entities. Under your direction, all conditioned souls, as if bound by rope, are constantly engaged in satisfying their desires. Following them, O embodiment of religion, I also bear oblations for you, who are eternal time. Purport: in the Katha Upanishad, it is stated that the Supreme Lord is the leader of all living entities. He is their sustainer and the awarder of their necessities and desires. No living entity is independent. All are dependent on the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the Vedic instruction is that one should enjoy life under the direction of the Supreme Leader, the Personality of Godhead. Vedic literatures like Ishopanishad direct that since everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should not encroach upon another's property, but should enjoy one's individual allotment. The best program for every living entity is to take direction from the Supreme Lord and enjoy material or spiritual life. A question may be raised. Since Kardama Muni was advanced in spiritual life, why then did he not ask the Lord for liberation? Why did he want to enjoy material life in spite of his personally seeing and experiencing the Supreme Lord? The answer is that not everyone is competent to be liberated from material bondage. It is everyone's duty, therefore, to enjoy according to his present position, but under the direction of the Lord or the Vedas. The Vedas are considered to be the direct words of the Lord. The Lord gives us the opportunity to enjoy material life as we want, and at the same time he gives directions for the modes of processes of abiding by the Vedas, so that gradually one may be elevated to liberation from material bondage. The conditioned souls who have come to the material world to fulfill their desires, to lord it over material nature, are bound by the laws of nature. The best course is to abide by the Vedic rules. That will help one to be gradually elevated to liberation. Kardama Muni addresses the Lord as Shukla, which means the leader of religion. One who is pious should follow the rules of religion, for such rules are prescribed by the Lord himself. No one can manufacture or concoct a religion. Religion refers to the injunctions or laws of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that religion means to surrender unto him. Therefore, one should follow the Vedic regulations and surrender unto the Supreme Lord, because that is the ultimate goal of perfection in human life. One should live a life of piety, follow the religious rules and regulations, marry and live peacefully for elevation to the higher statuses of spiritual realization. Let's take 2 comments. Yes, Gopal.
Hare Krishna. In 15, is this an example of Kamamishra Bhakti, Kardama Muni approaching the Lord with material desire?
Well, first of all, we have to keep in mind that these early sages and Prajapatis have been asked to populate the universe. So He's very dutiful here in following his authority to do this. And to answer your question, I mean, it is Mishra, mixed, as Prabhupada says here. Why do you want to enjoy material life in spite of personally seeing and experiencing the Supreme Lord? Not everyone is competent. So there's a stage at which one may have the need for some material facility, in which case he's asking for something that's not directly pure devotional service. So yes, the answer is yes. Yes? This is using up the quota. You're number 2. Go.
I have a question regarding this. Lord Brahma is technically his guru and is instructing him to populate the universe. And so in one sense, couldn't he also be following, although he's expressing these are my material desires, that might also, could you say that it could also be out of his humility? Is it him actually
wanting
wanting
I did say that in the beginning, that he's following the order of his spiritual master, but I responded by saying, I continued by saying, mentions here in his own commentary, why did he want to enjoy material life in spite of his personally? Meaning, the answer is not everyone is competent to be liberated from material bondage. It is everyone's duty, therefore, to enjoy according to his present position, but under the direction of the Lord of the Vedas. Interesting about these circumstances, Priyavrata was eager for a life of renunciation, and then he was dissuaded and asked to become a manager. And of course he was unsurpassed in the way he managed his lot in the universe. He was also told he wouldn't become attached, but he did. But then he became detached at the end. The point at which one becomes unmixed are slightly unclear. I mean, they're open to interpretation. Yes. This is 2.5.
I remember reading Bhakti Sandarbha, and it says, Dharma is called bhakti by offering results to the Lord, aropa siddha bhakti, and using it as assistant to bhakti, sangha siddha bhakti. By mixing such actions with bhakti, sakama bhakti results. And then it quotes verses 6 and 7 of this chapter, Jiva Goswami does. And then, so I'll just read the English. Ovidur, when Brahma said to Kardama, produce progeny, Kardama went to the bank of the Saraswati river and performed penance for 10,000 years. Then, through his austerities, using methods of worship with concentrated mind, Kardama with devotion worships the Supreme Lord. Give her benedictions to the surrendered. Then Jiva Goswami says something interesting. When he saw the Lord, he developed nishkama bhakti, indicated by his tears. He had desire in his bhakti because of his respect for the order of Brahma. Maitreya speaks the verses.
There you have it. See? When it starts, when it stops, how it's mixed or how it is. It takes very nuanced commentary from our acharyas. Interestingly enough, since you mentioned tears, the Lord shed a tear also out of compassion for seeing Kardama. It formed the sarovar there. He was so appreciative of his service and his mood and his dedication to him that he made Krishna emotional, and a tear came from his eyes. Okay, continuing 17. However, persons who have given up stereotyped worldly affairs and the beastly followers of these affairs, and who have taken shelter of the umbrella of your lotus feet by drinking the intoxicating nectar of your qualities and activities in discussions with one another, can be freed from the primary necessities of the material body. Worth repeating. However, persons who have given up stereotyped worldly affairs and the beastly followers of these affairs, and who have taken shelter of the umbrella of your lotus feet by drinking the intoxicating nectar of your qualities and activities in discussions with one another, can be freed from the primary necessities of the material body. Purport, pardon me? Anartha Buster. It's going in the Anartha Buster book. After describing the necessity of married life, Kardama asserts that marriage and other social affairs are stereotyped regulations for persons who are addicted to material sense enjoyment. The principles of animal life, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, are actually necessities of the body, but those who engage in transcendental Krishna consciousness, giving up all the stereotyped activities of this material world, are freed from social conventions. Conditioned souls are under the spell of material energy or eternal time, past, present, and future. But as soon as one engages in Krishna consciousness, he transcends the limits of past and present and becomes situated in the eternal activities of the soul. One has to act in terms of the Vedic injunctions in order to enjoy material life. But those who have taken to the devotional service of the Lord are not afraid of the regulations of this material world. Such devotees do not care for the conventions of material activities. They boldly take to that shelter which is like an umbrella against the sun of repeated birth and death. Constant transmigration of the soul from one body to another is the cause of suffering in material existence. This conditional life in material existence is called samsara. One may perform good work and take his birth in a very nice material condition, but the process under which birth and death take place is like a terrible fire. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his prayer to the spiritual master, has described this. Samsara, or the repetition of birth and death, is compared to a forest fire. A forest fire takes place automatically without anyone's endeavor. By the friction of dried wood and no fire a forest fire takes place automatically without anyone's endeavor. By the friction of dried wood, and no fire department or sympathetic person can extinguish it. The raging forest fire can be extinguished only when there is a constant downpour of water from a cloud. The cloud is compared to the mercy of the spiritual master. By the grace of the spiritual master, the cloud of the mercy of the personality of Godhead is brought in, and then only when the rains of Krishna consciousness fall can the fire of material existence be extinguished. This is also explained here. In order to find freedom from the stereotyped conditional life of material existence, one has to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, not in the manner in which the impersonalists indulge, but in devotional service, chanting and hearing of the activities of the Lord. Only then can one be freed from the actions and reactions of material existence. It is recommended here that one should give up the conditional life of this material world and the association of so-called civilized human beings who are simply following in a polished way the same stereotype principles of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Chanting and hearing of the glories of the Lord is described here as Twadgunavada Siddhu. Only by drinking the nectar of chanting and hearing the pastimes of the Lord can one forget the intoxication of material existence. Your wheel, which has 3 naves, rotates around the axis of the imperishable Brahman. It has 13 spokes, 360 joints, 6 rims, and numberless leaves carved upon it. Though its revolution cuts short the lifespan of the entire creation, this wheel of tremendous velocity cannot touch the lifespan of the devotees of the Lord. Purport: the time factor cannot affect the span of life of the devotee. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that a little execution of devotional service saves one from the greatest danger. The greatest danger is transmigration of the soul from one body to another. and only devotional service to the Lord can stop this process. It is stated in the Vedic literatures, Harim vina naiva sritim taranti. Without the mercy of the Lord, one cannot stop the cycle of birth and death. In Bhagavad Gita it is stated that only by understanding the transcendental nature of the Lord and his activities, his appearance and disappearance, can one stop the cycle of birth, a cycle of death, and go back to him. The time factor is divided into many fractions of moments, hours, months, years, periods, seasons, etc. All the divisions in this verse are determined according to the astronomical calculations of Vedic literature. There are 6 seasons called ritus, and there is the period of the 4 months called chaturmasya. 3 periods of 4 months complete 1 year. According to Vedic astronomical calculations, there are 13 months. The 13th month is called Adi Masa, or Mala Masa, and is added every 3rd year. The time factor, however, cannot touch the lifespan of the devotees. In another verse, it is stated that when the sun rises and sets, it takes away the life of all living entities. But it cannot take away the life of those who are engaged in devotional service. Time is compared here to a big wheel which has 360 joints, 6 rims in the shape of seasons, and numberless leaves in the shape of movements. Time is compared here to a big wheel which has 360 joints, 6 rims in the shape of seasons, and numberless leaves in the shape of moments. It rotates on the eternal existence, Brahman. Yes? Okay.
Maybe if you can summarize your expert summary on the lifespan of the devotees cannot be touched.
Yeah, the lifespan of the devotees cannot be touched. Well, that's what you want to have elaborated upon?
Yeah, just a little bit on that, because I think I still didn't get the conclusive...
Well, Prabhupada is specifically referring to a verse here, Ayur Humsam Udyan Ashtan Chanyanasto, which says that with every rising and setting of the sun, a day passes and is lost in the life of a living entity. Tasyarte yakshano nita uttama shloka vartaya means that there's an exception to that rule of the sun taking away your life. Essentially, it's like the sun's going overhead and I'm taking away your life, and everyone's too busy to hear it. But devotees who are engaged in hearing and chanting are not losing that time. They're investing it. Uttama shloka vartaya. Those who are going on with devotional service, specifically hearing and chanting about the Lord, are positioning themselves so that they'll go upwards towards Krishna. They will be liberated and permanently engaged in their eternal occupation as Krishna's servant. Lavam sadurlabam idam bahusam bhavante manusham artanam anityam api hadira. This verse from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam says it's very rare to get a human form of life. And although it's anitya, it's very temporary, it can be traded in for something eternal. It's the best deal you can get anywhere. You get a temporary ticket, you can trade it in for something eternal. And so those who are engaged in devotional service, although they're in a temporary world which is tenuous and which normally is fraught with this idea that one's being deprived of time. That's for the sense enjoyer. For the devotee, it's actually transferring that temporality into an eternal position in the spiritual world. So there's no loss. Text number 19. My dear Lord, you alone create the universes. O personality of Godhead, desiring to create these universes, you create them, maintain them, and again wind them up by your own energies, which are under the control of your second energy called Yogamaya. Just as a spider creates a cobweb by its own energy and again winds it up. In this verse, two important words nullify the impersonalist theory that everything is God. Here Kardama says, O personality of Godhead, you are alone, but you have various energies. The example of a spider is very significant also. The spider is an individual living entity, and by its energy, it creates a cobweb and plays on it. And whenever it likes, it winds up the cobweb, thus ending the play. When the cobweb is manufactured by the saliva of the spider does not become impersonal. Similarly, the creation and manifestation of the material or spiritual energy does not render the creator impersonal. Here, the very prayer suggests that God is sentient and can hear the prayers and fulfill the desires of the devotee. Therefore, he is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, the form of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. My dear Lord, although it is not your desire, you manifest this creation of gross and subtle elements just for our sensual satisfaction. Let your causeless mercy be upon us, for you have appeared before us in your eternal form, adorned with a splendid wreath of tulsi flowers. Purport, it is clearly stated here that the material world is not created by the personal will of the Supreme Lord. It is created by his external energy because the living entities want to enjoy it. This material world is not created for those who do not want to enjoy sense gratification. This material world is not created for those who do not want to enjoy sense gratification, who constantly remain in transcendental loving service and who are eternally Krishna conscious. For them, the spiritual world is eternally existing and they enjoy there. Elsewhere in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that for those who have taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this material world is useless. Because this material world is full of danger at every step, it is not meant for the devotees, but for living entities who want to lord it over the material energy at their own risk. Krishna is so kind that he allows the sense-enjoying living entities a separate world created by him to enjoy as they like, yet at the same time he appears in his personal form. The Lord unwillingly creates this material world, but he descends in his personal form or sends one of his reliable sons or a servant or a reliable author like Vyasadeva to give instruction. He sends an author. I like that. He himself also instructs in his speeches of Bhagavad Gita. This propaganda work goes on side by side with the creation to convince the misguided living entities who are rotting in this material world to come back to him and surrender unto him. Therefore, the last instruction of Bhagavad Gita is this: give up all your manufactured engagements in the material world and just surrender unto me. I shall protect you from all sinful reactions. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, 18 Thakur. If you so desire, please inspire us to take advantage of your offer, to use this very short lifetime to go back home, back to Godhead. Let us trade in this temporary miserable body for a body in which we can serve you 24 hours a day without any stoppage. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone agrees with this prayer in whole or in part. Please unmute and say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Gaur Premanande. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. 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 Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Hari Bo, Nitai Gora Hari Bo. Vanchakalpataruscha Kripa Sindhaveva Chapatitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.